Hi guys, welcome to Learn with W3 Schools. Today we're going to learn lightning fast way of learning AJAX in 20 minutes. My name is Dr. Zeeshan. Let's begin with AJAX in a very quick and short manner. So what is AJAX? Well, AJAX stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. It allows the web pages to update it asynchronously by exchanging small amount of data with the server behind the scenes, meaning that it can asynchronously without you needing to refresh the page. Data is sent asynchronously directly to the server and data is fetched from the server. Hence, you do not need to reload the page, refresh the page, and data is updated as you are scrolling on your browsers. So when you scroll through your Facebook or Twitter feeds or Instagram feeds, you see the contents are updated. That's what asynchronous exchange of data basically means, and AJAX plays a key part in that. So this means that it is possible to update parts of a web page without reloading the entire web page. And that's why we use AJAX, and that's why it's very so important. What exactly is AJAX? AJAX is not a programming language. It is what we call a framework of JavaScript. AJAX is using a combination of built-in browsers HTTP request, in specifically XML request that is sent to the server. So we call it XML HTTP request object, which to request the data from the web server. And it uses something called JavaScript and HTML DOM to display the data on the web page. Now, let's talk about this AJAX XML HTTP request object. So this XML HTTP request object is used primarily to exchange the data with the server. So you will be using this extensively, this XML HTTP request object. How do we use it? Well, you use it by within JavaScript tag. You create a variable using let x HTTP. Sometimes we create as a constant as well because we don't need to change it. You can create it as a constant. You create a variable x HTTP. Again, name can be anything, but usually you see in the notes we use x HTTP variable name. Then we use a new keyword and we call the XML HTTP request constructor. So using the new, we create an object of this class. This is by default present with the JavaScript code, so you don't need to do anything else or import any library. It's there. You just create it using a new object and pass that object reference to this variable. That's it. That's how you create the HTTP request object. Now, to define the callback function, meaning that what happens when this HTTP request object is there, how to use it. Well, we create certain events. We're going to talk about events later on, but we say, hey, we have an event called onload. So meaning that when HTTP, this very object dot onload, when this event is onloaded, then we call a function to perform a certain task. So meaning that this part of the code will automatically execute when something is loaded, or in other words, the page is loaded, or a button is clicked, or a cursor is hovered, or a browser is done. Browser is just scrolling upwards. Whatever event you trigger here, you call an anonymous function. This is a function body. We technically call it anonymous functions, means it does not have a body. It's a runtime function. It's created on the runtime, performs its task, and then disappears. So it does not have a function name to it. So it's just as a function word, which we use in JavaScript to create a function, bracket start bracket close, block start block close, and the code goes here. This is how we define what we call a callback function with an HTTP onload event. There are various other events we're going to talk later on. So how do I send a request? So you can send a request to the server using an open and send methods. Open and send methods. The open method specifies the request type, either get or post, the URL, and whether the request should be asynchronous or yes or no. Then we say we have something called a send request. This send method sends the request to the server. So we use this combination of open and send to send the data to the server. Open basically specifies the request type, and actually sends that request. So this true and false defines whether you want the data to be asynchronous or not. So by setting it to true, we ensure that we are using the asynchronous mechanism within JavaScript, and the JavaScript does not have to wait for the page server to respond, and it can continue its next requests. Okay, so that's how the system is basically updating in real time. If you set it to false, the asynchronous is turned off and it will wait until we receive the data. How do we get the response? You're using AJAX. So we say that when the server response is ready, the onReady state change event is triggered. Okay, so that's the key thing. So we use a combination of this. Okay, we create an object, we call an onload event, then we use open and send event. So it's all a combination of this. I'll do a few examples later on. So we say, okay, once we have it, how do we get the response? So we say that when the response is ready, an onReady state change event is triggered. You can use this response text property to get the response data from the server. For example, in this case, we have x HTTP onReady event. So now see, we have used another event here instead of what we call onload. So this on ready state change event is again an event that means that whenever the server has an event, it will automatically trigger this event. And then we again create an anonymous function, bracket start bracket close, and we define a block. And then within this block we do our options. In this case, what we are doing here is we checking the condition that whether we receive the response correctly or not. So we say this dot ready state. Again, ready state is a keyword that is defined within the AJAX libraries. This is referring to the current system, current Java object. So we say, hey, this dot ready state, where the response that we have received from this on ready state event change is equals to 4 defines the request is complete and the response is ready from the server. So have we received the response and the response is okay and it is not null? So this again, this dot states defines that. So this is just the conditional statement that we use, not mandatory, but always recommended to ensure that you receive an accurate and correct response. Okay, and the response is not null or it's not empty. So we check, hey, is the response ready? And the response is all okay and it is successful. If that is true, then you can go and perform whatever task you want. So in this case, we are saying document.getElementById by ID demo inner HTML. So we say go inside the web document, the HTML page, get me an element that has an ID called demo, change its inner HTML to this dot response text. So whatever text we display here will be displayed on our browser. This can be an image to load, this can be a tweet to load, this can be an Instagram reel to load. Whatever you want to do, this response will basically trigger that effect. So this is how we basically collectively combine all these 4 steps: creating an object, creating an onload event functions, opening and sending the data, and then finally checking whether the response is received or not. Okay, so let's understand an example of this to get this whole picture in a view. So for example, we have an HTML body, we create a div tag and we name it ID called demo. Okay, then we say it's a standard thing, but this time we declare a button. Okay, so we say once I click on this button, we need to trigger a load document thing. And the idea here is that I don't want to refresh the page, I just want to update the content. So we declare a function here. Then inside the script tag, we create our AJAX and JavaScript code. So we declare a standard JavaScript function using the function keyword. We define the load document, this function name here, bracket start bracket close, and then we start define a block start block close. Inside this, we write our AJAX code. So JavaScript and AJAX actually work together. That's why we say JavaScript is basically using, or AJAX is basically a framework of JavaScript as we define it. So AJAX needs JavaScript to work with, and it uses actually JavaScript code to do all its acts. So we say, hey, let's create a variable XHTTP, for example, new XHTML response. The first task, create an object. Then we define an event, XHTTP on load. When this event, when we receive this response, you need to do the onload event. And then we declare an anonymous function bracket start bracket close, means at runtime this function will be created and it will perform a task. So we say document.getElementById means go inside this HTML document, get me an element by ID, that ID name is demo. So find me this element that has a demo ID inside it. Dot inner HTML will mean that go inside this and change its inner HTML. This inner HTML is going to be this dot response. So whatever response is received from the server, change it to that particular value. Then after this, we check HTTP open, get using the get method, and we call the AJAX info text file, the response that is received from the server. And then we use xhttp.send method. So this is how simply, whenever we click on a button, the response is generated and the information from this text file is displayed in this variable. Simple as that. Without refreshing the page, the contents are uploaded. This is how AJAX simply works. Now let's talk more about this XML file. So we say AJAX and XML file. So AJAX can also be used to fetch data from an XML file. So you can have data in an XML file and you can read the data from an XML file. How does that work? So we say HTTP open get data.xml, set it to true. Again, so this time we are using this third number step. We're saying, okay, open this file, read this data.xml file, set it to true so it becomes asynchronous, and send the data to the server. Then XHTTP on ready state change function. So once we send it, if the server response is received on ready state change, means when the state is changing, again we create another anonymous function or a runtime function, block start block close with a semicolon. Inside it, first we need to check whether the server response is okay or not. So we say this, the current object that is sending the request dot ready state is equals to 4. If it is 4, means that it's all okay, response is ready. Then we said this dot status is also 200. 200 basically means that okay, meaning the request was successful and the server returned the desired data. So yes, we have received this. If that is the true, then we do that. So this condition is not mandatory, always recommended to ensure that you receive a proper response. If the no response is there, you can write an else statement, then no response received from a server. Okay, so inside this now we create let XML document this dot response dot XML. So once we receive the response here, we have this predefined variable that contains the response that has been sent through this data. We create another variable called empty text. We ask it to that, hey, XML document dot get elements by tag name, employee name. So this is the function that is using JavaScript to read the data from the XML file. And then once we have that data, we assign it to X. And then we use a loop to iterate through those data of XML documents. So for example, this data.xml that we have is in this particular format. So we have employees, employee, one employee, second employee, third employee, and each employee has a name. It has my channel name, and we request to subscribe and comment. So for example, we create this simple XML and we want to read that. So we save it as data.xml, this data.xml. Now we want to iterate through it. So this is what we're doing. Once you read the XML, get element by ID, tag name, employee. So find me the tag name that is of employee, save it to X, and then we use a for loop starting from I, X dot length, how many employees we have, go to that, and then we say text, this variable here is equals to plus, again assignment operator, assignment to equal to operator, xi means the first index of I, get element by tag name, get me the element by a tag name, the zero index should be name. Okay, so child node again is supposed to be the zero index, node value, and then we're going to print that. So the node value will give us the actual node value information. So we iterate through each of these tag elements using XML and reading the data through our AJAX so that page doesn't need to be refreshed, and it's done all asynchronously. And then finally, once this data is read and saved inside the text variable, we say go inside the document, get me an element by ID called demo. So we create an ID called demo, again any div or any paragraph that has a demo ID. Dot inner HTML, go inside this dot inner HTML and change to text, which now contains all the names instead of the text. So the output would generate the name of all the XML elements that we have here. So employee name, this for Dr. Zeeshan, myself, my channel name, and then again the request to like and subscribe. So this will be printed here. So this is how we simply use XML content and we process it with our AJAX things. We use AJAX also with PHP, which is again most commonly done. AJAX can be used to send data to PHP file and receive a response. So to do that, we again use the XHTTP. Again, the object has been created. We say .open get request server.php, the name and whatever parameters you want to pass it to. So server.php will have the information of what data is to be sent. Again, we set the variable to true, so it's asynchronous. We send the data to the server that, hey, server PHP, my name is Dr. Zeeshan, my age is this, let me fetch me data. So I'm sending the data to the server. Then we have a file on the server called server.php that receives this information and then processes it and then generates the output. So the example of sending data to the PHP file using post method is again this way. So you can send the data using get, or you can send the data post. If you are using with get, we all know that get requires the data to be sent through a URL encoding. If you are using post, data is hidden from the viewer and no longer visible to the URL. Rest information is almost same. Then we say, hey, SHTTP set request header, content type, application, and we give a predefined information what type of content we are sending to the server. And then we say XHTTP send name, Dr. Zeeshan, and age. We send this information separately. So if you're sending it using get, we send the information with the URL. If you're sending it with a post, you need to send it separately with a send request. So previously send had no arguments. Now we are sending it an arguments. So depending on whether you want to use the get method or post method, this is how we send the data. So if you're sending sensitive information, we always use a post method and we define the content type and we use the send data to send the information. So it's hidden inside the packet of XHTTP rather than displayed publicly on the URL. Once we do that, the data is sent to the server reads the file, and then again we can use a similar code like this one where we receive the data on ready state change and process whatever we want. Of course, this is specifically reading XML file. You can have your own code to define your PHP code. Similarly, AJAX also works with ASP.NET. So the AJAX can also be used with ASP.NET active server pages from Microsoft to send and receive the data. To send the data to the server using ASP, again we use xhttp.open, get or post depends up to you. We use server.asp and the whole mechanism is exactly same. And we send the data. If you want to do the with post method, again exactly same data, you just change the file name. So you can send the data to PHP, you can use XML, or you can use ASP.NET. You use AJAX to read the data from the database as well. So AJAX can be used to retrieve data from a database without refreshing the page, and this is the most common example that we use. So the data is fetched from the database either using ASP or PHP, whatever language you want to use. So example of retrieving a data from MySQL database via PHP, I'm going to discuss that. For example, we have a file called getData.php. We create that file, will connect to the database. This file will connect to the database. It will read the data and records and echo the output back. So primarily the PHP code you will have to do separately. I'm just showing you the XML data, AJAX data, sorry. So within AJAX, we again use XHTTP open. If I'm using get request, get, and I call this PHP file. So previously in again PHP example, we use a server file. So basically this file will contain information of how to connect to the database, how to find a particular data, how to print the data to the server, which again in PHP we use echo statement to print the data. So all information is done through PHP. For PHP, do tune in, subscribe. I will be making a whole tutorial on PHP very soon and uploading it, so you will find more information about how to work with PHP and use AJAX for that matter. Anyway, so you use the same information, and then we use the onReady change event. We call an anonymous function, and we check whether the response is received from the server or not. Once the server response is retrieved, we say document.getElementById. Whatever document or wherever you want to put that output, you change its inner HTML to this .response. So whatever response is sent from the PHP file will be inside this variable, and that information will be displayed on your web page. This is how very simply and easily we receive and update the data using our AJAX. AJAX applications. Let's do a few examples and understand how they're working. So again, revising the same thing, sending a simple AJAX request, example 1. So we create a function, we use a load text event, just like previously. We create an HTTP request object. You need to do that first. Then we say define what happens on the state change of event. So we have on the ready state change function. So when the response is received from the server, the state is automatically changed. This event is automatically triggered. Then we check whether the response is okay or not. If it is okay, then we update the response on our web page. As simple as that. Okay. Then obviously once we have that object, we need to send the request first for this response to work, for this event to trigger. To do that, again, we use xhttp.open get. We send to the server file. This can be text file. Usually it should be a PHP file or our AJAX file or any server file, so that we can receive a response from the server. And then we do xhttp send. This is how a simple XML would AJAX would look like. Another request would be, or another example would be AJAX requesting a JSON response. Okay. Nowadays we also use JSON very commonly instead of directly asking PHP to print the data on the page. So to do that, same mechanism. We create a function. We have a onload JSON event. This function can be called on button or on any particular event that you want to trigger using JavaScript. Once this function is triggered, it will create an XHTML object. Then we say again define what happens when the state request is changed, which means that when the request state is changed, when we receive a response, we create an anonymous function, block start, block close. We check whether the response is okay. If the response is okay, now because we know the response is in form of JSON, we create a variable called JSON response. It's in our own variable. We use JSON.parse this .response. So whatever JSON response came, we need to parse that response into a JavaScript readable format. This is again JavaScript function. I have talked about this in my JavaScript tutorial, so do follow that tutorial, and also JSON tutorial. I've recently already uploaded JSON tutorial. You can find it on my channel. I will leave the link in the description. It talks about this JSON parsing response, how we use JavaScript to parse JSON response. So we are just parsing the JSON response and giving it back to a JavaScript variable. Then simply your mechanism, document got element by ID, example 2. Find me an element that has an example 2 ID, change its inner HTML to this JSON response dot name. In this case, for example, if my response JSON had a name or variable to it, we can use the variable or whatever parameters you have used in JSON, you can use that to print here. This is how we basically try that. Then obviously don't forget to open the XHTTP request to a JSON file and send the request. So this can be a JSON file, this can be a PHP file, this can be an AJAX file, ASP file. ASP can also return a JSON data, PHP can also return a JSON data, or you can also directly call a JSON file to return a JSON data, which then will be triggering this event and this function will execute. Okay. So this again is just a file name. You can use PHP, read the data from the database, send it as a JSON to your JavaScript node here, and then using this structure, traverse it into a JavaScript node from JSON to JavaScript, and then print the data on your web page. Okay. Another example is how do we process the AJAX form data using, again, AJAX. Same mechanism, same process. Okay, the concept, if you understand, is exactly same. We have a function which is triggered. You basically create a function so that at a certain point you want to trigger a function. So we create an HTTP request object. We create a form data, new form data, get element by ID my form. So we create a form using HTML. We set its ID to my form. So when the user clicks on a submit button, we execute this function which reads the form data, saves it into a new form object, and assigns it to a form variable. Then we say XHTTP on request state change. Once the request is response is received, we check again the status of the response. If it is all okay, ready state is 4, perfect. Now we again process the inner HTML data. Blash. Okay. So what happens? Once I click on this button, we send the request to the server, submit.php. So what happens is that once we have a form, when user clicks on a button, this method is triggered. This will send the data to the submit.php file. So whatever form data is here will automatically be sent to this submit.php using open request and send form data request. So the form data first will be sent to our server. The server will process, read the data, process it, and generate a response. When the responses will come, this method is triggered, and it will print the response on your page, whatever you want. So actually the reading of your form data is done inside the PHP file. Again, more about PHP in next tutorial to come. So do follow along. Okay, so that rounds it up. AJAX, it's a quick and lightning fast tutorial to give you a brief introduction how AJAX is working. Okay, so if you want to dig deeper into it, do explore more examples and practice on my channel. I will be uploading more tutorials on this almost weekly. I'm trying to upload as many as I can, so do follow along. Do leave me a comment, and do try to like this video if you find it interesting. It helps me, it helps the channel a lot in becoming more popular and encourages us to make more videos. Okay, so thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Dr. Zeeshan Bhatti. Happy coding, signing off.